just a moment, but I want to bring up the idea of property taxes, and we don't have time to get into all that. But they're part of this mix as well. And the Republican co-chair of a bipartisan committee at the State House that's looking into property taxes and all the things that go into that has said that a list of recommendations that was supposed to come out in June probably won't come out this year, maybe? But property taxes, I want you all to kind of weigh in on how they affect this whole tax policy argument conversation.
Yeah, so property taxes are, much less progressive than the income tax. They're probably not quite as regressive as a sales tax, but there are really targeted ways to make sure that we can prevent the people who would struggle to pay their property taxes from doing so. And the most targeted way is something I think Bailey testified on, which is something called a circuit breaker, which is just a mechanism to lower property taxes if they become too high a share of your income. And I think that that's what we need. Greg talks about caution. I think that's a real area where you can bring a precision to who you are helping rather than kind of lowering rates across the board at the same time that you're lowering income tax rates, which basically just leaves communities unable to invest in the things that matter.
Well, I think whatever you do temporarily to fix today's problems, the immediate amount of pain that people are having are going to be Band-Aids. Something like a circuit breaker could work, I think, in a targeted way. It'd be expensive to the state probably to do that. I can't remember what LSC has looked at it, so there would be some issues there, but here's the bottom line. We're not going to fix that problem. We don't talk about the structure of government. These two things are inextricably linked. And so the problem is that you could fix the problem. You could expand the homestead exemption. You could target it to a whole bunch of folks that way to expand that. And that could ameliorate the problem. It doesn't fix the problem because, again, those taxes are downstream of the structure of government and how it's funding services and how you have two fire departments within less than a mile of each other from two different local governments, but they're within the same county. How do we structure things like that? These are the hard conversations of looking under the hood because, frankly, I think we should be lowering the property taxes. And also, by the way, we should be doing as much property tax abatements. We have, because of municipal income tax, we abate property taxes and let cities get money on the income tax, municipal income tax. That's not good. So we carve out all these holes in our property tax base, which means that we diffuse that cost to residential homeowners. That's ridiculous. We should have, again, this is about the base. We need to
I've calmed down, so I don't interrupt. Greg is and I'm here for other people, but I do have things to say. But
I wanted to give Bailey an opportunity to weigh in here because there are a lot of bills in the legislature that would deal with little areas of property tax policy.
Right, and as Amy said earlier, the circuit breaker is the best way to target property tax relief while considering all the people and entities that rely on that property tax revenue. For a couple things in Ohio to be true. One about our property taxes is that, yes, our property values have been seeing a great rise, historic rises, that does not equivalent to one-for-one raises in property taxes. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of House Bill 920, but it is keeping property taxes down in terms of in times of great inflation and times of great value increases. There are people who are struggling to pay the burden from that property tax, but the circuit breaker is the best way to do it, as Amy said, because it looks at the burden of your property tax compared to your income. It takes it away from you implement it through the income tax base or the income tax credits, so you don't mess with like the Fair School Funding Plan, which has greater implications as well. But also paying for it by the state, you're not hurting the local governments that rely on that revenue.
Again, we could spend many hours talking about this. You mentioned House Bill 920, which is a school funding. Yeah. Any state house reporter goes, we're talking about that. So, Jordan, before we go to audience questions, any final words?
About where it should be. But we have local taxing authorities that can get direct ballot access without going through the county commissioners. What happens is we have levy after levy after levy. Taxpayers don't think about the fact that the one they voted on in the fall is going to be aggregated to the spring. And all you ever hear about is that. So we have to think about how do we structure those kind of questions? How do we have a regional or at least a county-wide?
So I've calmed down, but I haven't calmed down. I think it is fascinating that Greg is concerned that we have local taxation levels that are different, but he thinks the solution that is cutting the state income tax, because that's exactly backwards, right? If we want to have less local taxation, the answer is to have more taxation raised at the state level and distributed in a fair way. And I was always extremely proud when I lived here that Cuyahoga County did such a good job of passing this human service levy, because Cuyahoga County residents cared about the most vulnerable people in the county. I was certainly proud, I raised my kids in Shaker Heights. They got a phenomenal education. I think it was the highest tax school district in the state, or second. And I was proud to pay those taxes and to know that those schools would be high quality so that they would have higher graduation rates, more ability to deliver people to college. But if you're going to advocate for lower local taxation, it is just backwards to then say the solution to that is to cut the state income tax further and starve local governments. And just the last thing is, you say starve the beast. The beast is our schools.